This alternate MCU would begin with The Amazing Spider-Man in 2002. The film would overall have the exact same plot as the 2002 film, with a few changes. First, Spider-Man would have moving eyes, which here would be done with prosthetics and animatronics instead of being CGI like in the actual MCU. Secondly, both Daredevil and Wolverine would be mentioned by J. Jonah Jameson. Finally and most notably, we would get a post-credits scene where Nick Fury approaches Peter to ask him about the Avengers Initiative. The Uncanny X-Men would be a mix of X-Men, First Class and the 2000 X-Men film. The lineup would be the original lineup from the comics: Professor X, Angel, Beast, Cyclops, Phoenix and Iceman, and it would show their origin. The main villains would be the Brotherhood of Mutants, Magneto, Mastermind, Toad, Mystique, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. The latter two would end up turning against Magneto and joining the X-Men, and Wolverine would also cameo in a post-credits scene similar to that one scene from X-Men, First Class. Hulk is a film I really love, so I wouldn't change much. However, what I would change is that I would add Wolverine as a major character. Since he originally debuted in an Incredible Hulk comic, Logan is hired by Ross to hunt down the Hulk. He eventually finds Bruce and they fight, this taking the place of the, admittedly out-of-place Hulk dogs fight scene. Hulk obviously gets the upper hand. But this being Logan, he manages to heal himself almost instantly. Logan eventually returns during the final battle against Bruce's father. Logan is once again overpowered, but Bruce still does manage to defeat his father in the same way he did in the actual film. The only other notable changes are the addition of two post-credits scenes. The first one is very similar to the one from The Incredible Hulk, just with Tony Stark swapped out for Nick Fury. The other post-credits scene sees the return of Charles Xavier, who once again tries, and this time succeeds, in recruiting Logan to the X-Men. Spider-Man 2 would follow pretty much the same plot because it's a masterpiece. However, I would add an Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, as a secondary villain. Max would be an electrical engineer working on the fusion experiment alongside Otto and Rosie. It's also established early on that he has somewhat of an unhealthy obsession with Spidey. During the experiment, Max is hit by energy from the fusion machine, which causes him to become a being composed entirely of energy. He and Otto team up to rob banks and eventually fight Spider-Man. By the end of the film, Electro is locked up in the recently created rack, setting him up to return later on. Iron Man follows the exact same plot, with a few changes. First, Don Cheadle would play Rhodey from the beginning so that we don't have to fire Terrence Howard over a simple pay dispute. Secondly, Tony's second suit would be a more powerful, gold reskin of his Mark I. And last but not least, well, I'm sure you already know.
As if gamma accidents, radioactive bug bites, and assorted mutants weren't enough, I have to deal with a spoiled brat who doesn't play well with others and wants to keep all his toys to himself.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Well, what are we avenging?
Whatever the hell we want.
Fantastic Four would follow a similar plot, with the only changes being that, since Chris Evans is going to be Cap, Zac Efron would play the Human Torch instead. Doctor Doom would be replaced by Mole Man as the main villain, with Julian McMahon instead playing Lieutenant Kirby, an obvious nod to the F4's creator Jack Kirby, the head of the space organization that the F4 are a part of the mission for that ends up giving them their powers. Finally, Spider-Man would cameo in a post-credits scene since he and Johnny Storm are friends in the comics. Ant-Man would follow pretty much the same plot as the first Ant-Man movie. In my video What If Ultron was the main villain of the first MCU saga? My version. The only other notable thing would be that, in this timeline, Hank actually has the ability to talk to ants rather than it just being tied to his Ant-Man helmet. The origins of these powers will be explored in the sequel. Incredible Hulk would be the same as that actual movie, except it would be a more direct sequel to Hulk, 2003. Andrew Garfield would appear as Rick Jones and the leader would have a much larger role. X-Men 2, United follows a similar plot to the Black Lion's X-Men, Extinction from his video What If the MCU Had the Opposite Rights, mixed with elements of X2. When William Stryker and Bolivar Trask create the Sentinels with intent of using them to destroy the mutants, the X-Men, now joined by Wolverine, go from country to country saving and then recruiting mutants into the X-Men. These new recruits would include Colossus, Storm, Banshee, and Sunfire. The X-Men eventually team up with the Brotherhood of Mutants, now including Pyro and
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
Together, they rescue Charles and defeat Stryker and Trask, as well as Sabretooth, who would be working with them in this film. Angel dies instead of Jean Grey, and a post-credits scene teases Apocalypse as the villain of X-Men 3. Finally, the Avengers would be overall similar to the 2012 film, with some obvious differences. First, the lineup would be the original lineup from the comics: Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Ant-Man and the Wasp, with Spider-Man being added as the sixth member. The main villain would still be Loki, with the Wrecking Crew also appearing as secondary villains for the Hulk to fight before Loki brainwashes him to be his servant. The post-credits scene would also still tease Thanos,